All right, boys and girls, this is like Daniel Negreanu laying down in bed when he does one of his vlogs. I had a double board PLO bomb pot hand tonight that I thought was pretty interesting. I got it in with the nuts on one board, nothing on the other board. I lost my entire stack and I played it horrendous. What I'm going to do is go through the equities on double board PLO and how to calculate them versus his specific hand, but also versus his specific ranges using two different software tools. So hopefully you find this helpful. If you do, subscribe below. Please click on my links and all that good stuff. Alrighty, I'm going to calculate here using this equity calculator. The link is in the description below, and you can go ahead and click on that to figure out where to download this. This is looking at a double board four card Omaha. I'm going to do this two different ways. One using this equity calculator, which you can download for app or Android or Apple. And so basically what we had here today is a Jack 5 Deuce Ace. That was the one board. The other board was 10 8 6 Deuce. And basically what had happened is this double board, so it's like everyone puts in $10 and these are the cards you end up with. And the first act player bet pot, and I should have just not even got involved, but I reluctantly said, okay, I have the nuts on the one board. We'll see what happens. I have the 9-7. I don't like the fact there's hearts out there, so I called, and a lot of other people called. So the turn was what you see here, where backdoor diamonds came in, and then nothing really changed on the top board. I was trying to find I don't remember exactly what the board was, but it was something like this, where I didn't pick up much, but I do see there's a straight on here. I don't think there was a straight on here, so I might be wrong on the top board here. But anyway, my point being is I was first to act with all these people behind me. I didn't want to give a free card, but I only have one board, right? So, so I bet close to pot, and the guy repotted behind me, and I just about threw up. And I ended up calling, and just because at this point now there's so much money in the pot, and I didn't even have a full pot size bet left to call, so I ended up calling. And I want to show how bad a call this was. What happened was the villain ended up having 9-7 hearts, so he basically had the same board as me, plus he had a pair on the top. So he had something on the top, and he had a pair, and then on the other board we both had 9-7. So he's free rolling me, and at best I'm getting quartered. Now I'm going to in a minute use Pro Poker Tools to show what my hand is like versus his range, which is actually way more important because he's got a range of hands, not just this particular hand, but this is what he happened to have. And looking at this, you can't put ranges in this particular software, unfortunately. But looking here, I only have 20% equity. If you're way behind in equity on PLO, you really want to check and evaluate, decide whether or not to call. I didn't even have enough equity to call. You can see here, I'm getting quartered over half the time. And he's getting 3/4 of the pot half the time. Yeah, over half the time. And I'm in bad shape. If I'm lucky, I'm tying. But when I tie with him, I'm getting quartered. So, it's not good. And you can see here, basically, on 60 to 100% of rivers, my equity is like virtually zero. I have 20% equity and like 40% of rivers in this little graph down here. You can see I'm in bad shape, basically. And I only have 20% equity. Check, fold. I'm not even getting the right price to call against this particular hand. Now, in a minute, we'll look at the actual range of hands he could have and go from there. So what we're looking at here is now the Pro Poker Tools Odds Oracle. This shows with these particular hands and our first board here that we only have 10% equity. So basically this hand versus his hand on the hand where I knew I didn't have much equity. I really only had 10%. Knew I didn't have much going on. So is what it is. You have to excuse me, but the recording ended up losing voice a little bit here. So we're going to turn around and look at the next video here, the next board, excuse me. And the next board, I'm 36%. You would think I have the nuts, so I should be better than that. But with this particular hand, because he's free rolling me, I'm only at 36%. So we're not in very good shape there. What I really want to do now is, well, I can go ahead and take a look here. What I did is I wanted to see how often that I was going to hit a flush, that my opponent would hit a flush. And I believe it was about 40% of the time that he was going to hit a flush. Hence why I'm only 31% with the nuts, because 40% of the time he's going to hit a flush, and then I'm going to lose the whole pot. So bear with me here a minute. This takes a minute to fill this all in. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is a range of hands. We're going to go back to the um, original board here. We're going to turn around and look at ranges of hands. What we really want to know is what the opponent's range is versus us, not just his specific hand, because he could have a lot of different hands. And how we want to attack this is turn around and look at each board and leave our hand alone. And then we're going to look at what our opponent can have on each particular board and look what our equity is versus his range. And then we'll find out what the equity is. And then we're going to basically take those numbers and add them up and divide by 2. So we click on player 2 here. You go ahead and click on the range uh, tab here, and we can put down things that we think the opponent might have on this particular board. Typically, we would think our opponent would have at least something on each board, not necessarily. We're just going to have to put down a range. We left his original hand in there. And then we put down things such as he could have a set, and he could have a flush draw. So we're going to say a 4 flush or better in hearts. And he could have a straight draw. He could have 2 pair. So we're just going to put in here some things that we think that the villain could have as far as what his range would be on this particular board. And we go ahead and click start here. And what we see is we have about 70% equity. So we actually have higher equity than our villain just because we're putting in that he could have things other than a straight. He could have sets, he could have 2 pair, etc. Um, so we have 70% equity on that particular board where we already have them made nuts, right? So now we're here at the next board and where we only had 10% equity. And we're going to turn around and put in a range of hands. He could have sets, he could have 2 pair. Um, he could have just top pair, which is what he had, 1 pair. Um, he could have a straight. There's a straight on the board. And there's a few things he could have, straight draws, etc. So I went ahead and put in here basically what I thought his range could compose of. And once doing all this, you can turn around and see that the equity, give this a minute here, top 2 pair, making sure I have everything I could think of as far as what the villain could have. And it really didn't change anything. We're still at like less than 10%. So it really didn't change anything. So if you want to do the math on this versus his range, we are 70 plus 10 divided by 2. So 80 divided by 2, 40%. So if you consider both boards, we're actually 40% against his range of looking at the range of what he could have on both boards. So basically, what this tells us is that we're behind. And we should, number one, never be leading on this board. Never, ever, ever be leading on this board. We want to turn around and check. And if we think we're 40% against his range, we turn around, we might want to call. But we never want to lead when we're under 50%. So we want to go ahead and check and evaluate and see what happens. Even though we're giving away free cards and we have the nuts on one board, there's a lot of people. We were first to act, a lot of people in front of us. We are definitely behind because we have one board locked up. Well, we have one board with the nuts, but someone could be free rolling us. Number one. Number two, the villain has the other board, and we have like less than 10% on that other board. So if you consider, this is why you want to go two boards. You really want to be chasing two boards. You want to have like 40% on both boards so that you can divide it and say, okay, I have, 40% and I can check call and I'll stick around. Or, if I'm 70% on one board and 60% on the other, well, you add them up, divide by two, you're still over 50%. That's what you want if you're betting. If you're under 50%, you do not want to be betting. You want to be checking and evaluating, deciding whether or not you want to call. And in this case, checking is the right move. I could check call. I don't like going for two boards. You really should not go for two boards. You should only go for one board. So I messed up there. Number two, I should not be leading. I should be check calling because of the fact I only have one board that I'm just so far behind. If you do the math, that I should just be checking, calling, and evaluating. So basically, what had happened in this particular hand is the villain turned around and had the 9-7 of hearts, and he ended up hitting the heart on the one board, and he had a jack on the other board where I was only 9-10%, and I lost a ton of money where I shouldn't even been in there and gotten this involved. So I hope this really helps you guys. Um, I hope I didn't go too fast, and I hope this makes some sense. If you have any comments, you don't agree with anything, let me know in the link below. But you can see between looking at the phone and looking at Pro Poker Tools, both came out with only 20% against his particular hand. If you turn around and look at ranges, unfortunately, Pro Poker Tools does not have ranges looking at double board bomb pots, but you can figure this out by looking at a range for each board versus your particular hand, figuring out what your equity is, add them up, divide by two, and you know what your basic equity is. Our basic equity is not good. Um, Against his range, if in fact he only had the other board with the straights and he had nothing on the other board, or let's say he just had a set or a draw on the board where we had the 9-7, then you can see, okay, we're closer to 40%. If he has something like what he had, we're only 20%. We're in bad shape, which is what this particular villain had. So I'm not saying it's the right thing to fold, but I am saying that you want to and check. And if it's between the two of you, check call, depending on what you think and you read and the villain, etc. Um, but you definitely don't want to be piling a bunch of money. You just want to go ahead and check call if you feel that you want to see another card, and then on the river you can evaluate from there. But you're just not in very good shape. So what you want to do is most of the time here is just check call or pitch his hand, but definitely don't be leading. I led, and then he potted, and then you feel pot stuck, and I'm pot stuck, only getting 20%, and um, if I'm lucky, I'm getting quartered, and I ended up losing all my stacks. So bad hand, expensive hand. Hopefully, you guys learned from my mistake. Hopefully, some of this helped. Um, Pro Poker Tools. The link to that is in the link in the description below, and along with a bunch of other software I have as far as some. I have a free solver for Hold'em and a bunch of other good stuff. So, and on the website, I continuously build and add more and more software. So that's it. Feel free to leave me any questions. Hopefully, this is helpful to you. Thanks and goodbye.